Now there comes a moment in time when you go around and ask yourself, am I actually still improving when I'm trying to create new art? Or am I going in circles, or maybe just doing projects for myself? And I try to balance between these two things, because essentially I want to get good, right? You want to improve, you want to be better, and ideally also be kind of recognized for being good at it. And at the same time, it shouldn't matter, because there's no such thing as bad art. It shouldn't matter because there's no such thing as the right way to do it. Yet, there's things that everyone likes, and there's things that everybody hates. While going round in circles with these thoughts, and I try to put everything down. I try to put everything down that I've studied so far. So I consider myself a self-taught artist, so something that is in progress. I try to put everything down on a piece of paper and then iterate. And there was one thing missing. I was missing the idea of why would I put it down on paper, and now I have it. I put it down in one coherent place so I can share it with you. So let's dig in. I play a lot of video games, so I think I played so many games that it is hard-coded in my mind at this point that I cannot go away from thinking in skill trees. I cannot go away from thinking about character building, so I guess I'm gonna just fully embrace that going forward. So what you're looking at in front of me is a skill tree for kind of the first 100, maybe 150 hours of courses that I've done. Most of these ideas are not mine. They're from other teachers. They weren't put together in the same fashion, so it's kind of like separate courses that I've done before and like went from one to the other to the other to the other. So if we look a bit here, I have this section that I called Foundation, and it's going from lines, curves, and basic shape. I do a lot of these. I actually try to do these every day. If I was to share, I have done just this year about this much of those. And you might be thinking, what a waste of paper. But essentially the idea is to kind of look through these motions with the hand that you can just really get used to, and like you go back and forth and you practice curves, lines, and basic shapes. A bit further down I have squares, circles, ellipses, and again, you can never get too good at drawing a circle. There was this myth, or maybe it was true, that to join Da Vinci's workshop, you had to draw a perfect circle from your hand, unassisted. So it's something nice to think about. Further down here, I have 3D shapes, and this means practicing, your cubes, your spheres, and things like that. And beneath it, I added value. So it's one thing, of course, to think in 3D and draw it in 3D and ideally be able to rotate it in your head. But the other thing is also to shade it properly. So value here that connects to these other basic shapes plus, organic shapes that I put here in the bottom. Can you create volume by using different values? Then we have this other section called, I call it scenes here, but the whole idea is essentially that you're creating scenes. So what would be the items that you need to put a scene together? And I put objects, so it goes from practicing to draw anything that is simple and you have around the house, like cups or your kettle, or even like, I don't know, an orange or something. Right beneath it, I put perspective practice. Again, I do a lot of these just for warm-up now. But ideally you want to understand basic perspective, separate those. Perspective exercises have things look at on the horizon line, above horizon line, below, and then, as complicated as you want it to get. Right beneath it, I put color theory and composition. Again, you might think, how are these related? These are just the way it sits in my head right now. Color theory is quite fun. I think the moment you move on from pure value studies and you go into color theory, it gets more interesting. And when I mention this, I'm referring to color harmony, you know, analogous colors, analogous complementary colors, you know, and there's a few more. Composition, of course, there's so many different ways that you can compose it, and if you're using a lot of references from other photographers, it comes in very handy because you get used to seeing well-composed shots, and then you can start thinking about when you create your own scenes, how these shots and objects can go together into this one nice scene. Human-made object, well, I'll put a coffee machine here, but it can also be a building. And, you know, that's good practice because now you're combining, you know, perspective. You can put it in a good composition. You can add some colors, and you know, you can do this in practice. And then complex objects. I put a car here as an example, but the idea is actually to take a 3D object that consists of multiple parts that are circles, squares, and it goes in these odd shapes, and you put them together in this more complex object. Moving on, next we have character building, which I think is quite fun. I think essentially when I was just starting out to learn to draw, this was definitely one of the top goals out there. I wanted to create my own characters. I want to give them a story. I want to give them a background and, you know, have this creative dump into something. But a good place to start in most courses that I looked at was gestures that you practice to get the general feel for the pose, structured figures when you start combining basic shape objects that we covered in the other section, you know, such as cylinders, cubes, and you put them together and you create the figure. So logically, you would expect anatomy to be next, and that's what I put here. It doesn't necessarily need to go in this place because, it doesn't necessarily need to go in this order because there's more to it. I just put it here more as a mental note that is right there. Because logically, just shading properly structured figures is already quite complex. So you could put that next, but I put anatomy here because I just wanted to know all the different muscles, and I generally find it quite interesting to study the human body. And next I have clothing folds. It's not exactly related directly to character building, but if you want to have nice clothing for your characters, you need to understand how clothing folds work. Next we have portraits, and portraits was a very interesting side quest for myself. It is a very complicated subject to study, kind of like same as human body proportions. Your mind is trained to automatically find what's wrong with the face, which makes it a very cumbersome topic to draw. But at the very top I put Loomis head, where essentially you start combining these basic shapes into a shape of a head. Right beneath it I added a sorrow head, which essentially is the study of how to properly shade a human face, and on the side here I put also Riley rhythms, which is also known as Riley abstractions. It was a methodology used by Frank J. Riley. It's not really a book, he didn't write the book himself, but he had a teaching system and it was passed down by his students, which later became a book. But it's still a pretty valuable method to draw portraits. Beneath it I have the skull. I think drawing skulls is quite fun, and it also is very, very rewarding in terms of trying to understand how to properly draw a face. A lot of things become a lot more clear, and by far I'm not an expert at it, of course, so there's still, it takes a while to learn it. And right beneath it I put anatomy. You know, when you start adding understanding of fat folds, muscles of the face, how one piece connects to the other, and things like that. Moving on the side here I have mediums. Normally when I practice, I try to also rotate through different mediums, and I put down here pencil, acrylic, gouache, watercolor, oil, which I probably will not get to anytime soon, mostly because of the limitations of drawing at home. And at the bottom I have also digital. Now, in the bottom here I also added a few ad hoc exercises. I think these didn't fit in a specific section here, at least not in my head. I have things like simplified form, when you try to take an object and simplify it to the most basic forms. Angles, when you're drawing from reference and you're trying to understand what is the right angle of an object that I need to draw. Drawing upside down, again, quite a good exercise and a good practice to try. When you do something upside down, essentially your brain can let go of trying to recognize this being a specific object. Rhythms, we talked about Riley rhythms before, but also, simple objects, especially if you're drawing animals or other, patterns in nature, you start noticing these rhythms that everything goes into. Color wheel. This is more specific to trying out different mediums. I try to draw out color wheels time after time just to try to see the transitions and blending for different materials that you use. Master studies, brilliant way to exercise. I think studying the great masters is definitely a useful practice to have. Negative space, when you take an object and you draw around it. And last but not least, again, value studies. But now here we talked about specific shapes, but in this value studies, I'm talking about taking any object and just trying to draw out pure values. So this was the main build, and the way I look at this work in progress, let's say skill tree, I intend to first of all update it along the way as I get better. At least I hope I get better. The other bit is just to pick and choose topics that I haven't practiced in a while. Whenever I feel stuck, I intend to look back, pick a subject, and stop overthinking, get out of my head, and just do it. Thanks so much for watching. I hope this was at least a little bit useful for yourself. Maybe you felt stuck, or maybe you just wanted to get other ideas from someone else. I wish you a lovely day, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.